So good morning, everyone. My name is Nicola McNevin. I'm Education Lead for JA Nova Scotia, and we're very excited to welcome you to the Arts World of Choices event. Thank you, teachers and students, for joining us. Today is the fourth and final day in our series of World of Choices virtual events. I'm sad to say that this is the end. We've had a wonderful, wonderful time with all of the career mentors who have joined us thus far, and we're very excited about today. This morning, you will have the opportunity to have two experiences. One is a closer look at the education and experiences of 4 featured mentors, and then you'll have the opportunity to join our Career Expo. So you will visit a Career Expo either as a class or individually. That's up to your teacher. And visiting a Career Expo booth will allow you to further explore some of the education programs offered and career options available within Nova Scotia. Before the Career Expo, we will go through the participant profiles together so that you can choose the booth that is most interesting and most exciting to you. Before we begin, I would like to thank RBC for hosting World of Choices. And in saying that, I would like to welcome our co-host today, Brett Himmelman. Brett, I'm going to share your profile in just a second and go over that, but would you like to just say a couple of words to introduce yourself before I do that?
Yes, of course. My name is Brett Himmelman. I'm an RBC Olympian, and I'm also a Canadian national team canoe sprint athlete. I'm very excited to be here today. I saw the list of mentors, and there's a lot of very exciting mentors, and I think everybody will get a lot out of today, including myself.
Super. Now let's see if I can get your profile up here so we can introduce your fantastic feats to the students. And I hope everyone can see that. So Brett Himmelman is a member of the Canadian national team since 2019. RBC is a RBC Future Olympian since 2018 to 2020. 31-time medalist, holy smokes, at the Canadian Canoe Championship. Brett is joining the RBC Olympian program after 2 years as a future Olympian, in which he was supported through his involvement with RBC Training Ground. Brett has raced for Team Canada as World Cups and has won international medals in junior competitions. He is also a 2-time Canada Games gold medalist and record holder. Brett was a full-time student while training and graduated from St. Mary's University in May 2021. Congratulations on that, Brett. With a Bachelor of Commerce in Finance with distinction. As a passionate community volunteer, Brett is a coach in canoeing, hockey, and lacrosse, a foster parent to rescue dogs, and is actively involved with mental health initiatives. We are so fortunate to have you with us today, Brett. Thank you so much for co-hosting with us.
No, it's my pleasure. I had a lot of fun doing it the first time around. I'm excited to do it again.
Super. So let's get to it. We are very happy to have our first featured mentor today. I'd like to introduce Leah Skerry. Leah is the newest entrepreneur in residence at St. Mary's University and co-founder of Squiggle Park. I think the teachers are going to love this. Leah is also a professional aerialist and dancer. Welcome, Leah. Oh, I think we're on mute.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'm very impressed by our host as well and fellow SMU alumni.
Super.
Well, great. I will start my presentation. I'll share my screen.
Oh, thanks.
Great. We can all see that?
We can now. Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. Okay, so good morning, everyone. I'm looking forward to sharing my journey as an entrepreneur and as an artist. And while I don't know if I have many answers for you, I will leave time at the end to answer questions as has been allotted, and hopefully at least I have some good questions that you can ask yourself. So I grew up in Dartmouth, and I ended up going to university at St. Mary's. And when I was at St. Mary's, I was studying business, but I always had a yearning for the arts. And so I found a loophole in the system pretty early where I took all my electives toward my business degree at NASCAD and Dalhousie in fine art, design, and architecture. And I remember going to my finance classes with my big art briefcase, and then I would be going to my art classes, and I would be sitting down with my friends at NASCAD, and I would be helping them price their artwork and things that were really important to becoming an independent artist. And I didn't really reflect on it too much at the time. I just knew I had a passion for both business and art, and I found a way to achieve that even through my education. And I've become a strong believer that that type of approach to learning and going after things that you're interested in, even if they don't necessarily fit in a nice clean box, is really critical. And while I was at SMU, I also took a course called Structuring the Startup with a professor named Ellen Farrell, who is a fantastic advocate for entrepreneurship and women in business in particular. And the intention of the class was to invest $10 and to see, what profit you made, which as a junior achievement group, you might be very familiar with that sort of approach. And it was very new and novel for me. And I realized that I had something really unique because I had been a designer and I could offer sort of web and design services to people. And I made more in that class than I'd ever made in a part-time job. So I continued down that road. Now, fast forward to 2014, and I gone on to be managing partner of a web development firm with my co-founder, who is also a kayak Olympian, Julia Rivard. And I remember sitting at my desk one particular day, and my office faced Gottingen Street in a yellow house across from a restaurant called Edna. And I was looking outside, and yeah, I was feeling a little uninspired. And when I felt uninspired, I would watch TED Talks. And for those of you that don't know, TED.com has an array of wonderful talks on really any subject. And so I often went to them to look for inspiration or a new way of thinking. And this particular day, I'd watched a TED Talk by a woman named Janet Eckelman, an artist in the US who develops these incredible sculptures all around the world. And she talked about her journey going from being a business graduate to an artist. And really, you can see her work. We'll see if I can switch. That looks like this. In Singapore and London, Portugal. But it didn't start that way for Janet. She was rejected from every art graduate school that she applied to. And she eventually moved to Bali, Indonesia, where she, on her own initiative, collaborated with artists to combine textile methods with contemporary sculpture. And it was actually the fishing nets of the people in Bali that gave her inspiration for the work that we see today. And I sat there watching her talk, and I got this surge of excitement and this little yearning voice saying, wow, like how amazing it would it be if I could do something like that, and just feeling so inspired. But it was a quick thought, and just as quick, my sort of sensor said, well, you can't do that, especially in Halifax. And with that dialogue running through my head, I moved on. And it was a very instant thought. I did, however, decide to email Janet because I thought she was really inspiring. And I said, if you ever need a website built, I could help her. But there was a part of me that day that knew that I really wanted to be an artist. I just didn't know how. And instead of having the bravery to admit it was something I wanted to do, I thought maybe that I could help her in some way. What I now know is that I didn't have the confidence to sort of reinvent my identity as a full-time artist. I had gone to business school, and I was a business owner, and I had stable income and had built up my reputation in that space. So I just kind of let it go. And I never did hear back from her about building her website. So the idea really faded. And for years, I continued in technology and developed other products and companies, and eventually implemented something called Innovation Time at the company, where people could work on projects that were inspiring to them. or really work on new technologies. And we had some success there. My colleagues and I founded Squiggle Park, and it's an educational video game that teaches reading skills from kindergarten up to 12th grade. And the two products, Squiggle Park and Dreamscape, now have over 4 million kids around the world playing this product. And the first product we developed was acquired by a company out of the US. So I'm really proud of the work that my team and I were able to do there and continue to do. Now, during those years, I started taking circus classes. I was a competitive gymnast as a kid, and so circus came very natural to me, despite being much too old to pursue something like circus. And eventually, I continued to train while I was running the company, and I was asked to perform professionally as a trapeze artist with a group in Chicago. And by that time, I was living in Toronto as part of the company goal to raise investment. So I sat on that opportunity to perform professionally for months, and I thought about it really hard and what that would mean. And I was really afraid that if I took that opportunity, I couldn't keep the role as CEO in a startup because it demanded so much of me. And I did eventually decide to take the opportunity to perform professionally, but it wasn't something I kind of saw as separate. I went back to that initial Leah in university that went to business school and also went to art school, and I was insistent I could run both a company and be a professional performer. And I think really I just couldn't let go of the identity and the deep responsibility I felt for those connected to the company. And so for an entire year, I ran the tech company while also performing as a professional artist, training 30 hours a week, plus performing and running the company. And it eventually became clear that I couldn't do both long term. And I was getting very tired. So I talked to my co-founder, and after several months, I transitioned out of my role as CEO. And I started again as a full-time artist, eventually taking me to Montreal to train and perform with the best circus performers in the world. And I had such an incredible experience, which of course, with the pandemic, was halted rather suddenly. And at that point, I thought, well, I tried. It was almost like a mini retirement, and now it's clearly time to go back to tech. And I wanted to be close to my family, so I moved back to Halifax, and I paused my art dream again, and slowly worked my way back into tech and the community here in Halifax in the business world. And last year, while living in Halifax, a funny thing happened. I met a friend while walking my dog early in the morning, and we got to talking about circus, and I told him I had a love of performing arts and dance, but that was over in Halifax. It wasn't really a reality here. And a few days later, he sent an audition for a project he had seen on Instagram taking place in Halifax. And it was a dance project that needed circus aerialists for an off-ground choreography in nets. And I looked at it and I auditioned, but very reluctantly. In fact, I put my name on the waiting list instead of in one of the actual audition slots because I had kind of put that part of my life on hold. And it turns out that this project, just fast forward here, was meant to take place in New York, but because of the pandemic, the choreographer decided to cast in Halifax because she had grown up in Chester and wanted to be close to her family for the year and was able to do so. And so I went out to this day-long audition, and I immediately had a feeling I was in the right place. And I couldn't really place why. And it took me the entire day of performing on these nets to realize that I was auditioning for the first ever performance that would happen on Janet Eckelman's nets, the woman that I was so inspired by 7 years ago. And as it turns out, I was cast as one of 4 dancer aerialists that will tour around the world on her sculptures. And this is just some of our rehearsals. And here is a picture of Jana and I from our fall rehearsal. So I'm sure you can tell by the smile on my face that it was a very special day for me. Now, if you asked me 7 years ago or even last year if I could have ever imagined being in this place, the answer most certainly would be no. I just couldn't imagine it. And how could I ever really imagine it? 7 years ago, I'd never been on a trapeze. 7 years ago, I wouldn't have that bravery to take a leap into a profession that I really had no skill set in. And I was too busy worrying about things I could control or couldn't control, like how I'd be perceived if I actually did something I yearned for or became a full-time artist, and taking that leap into something that was completely different from the identity that I had built over that lifetime. But the thing is, we can really never know where we'll end up, and we can never really control that outcome. You know, those questions like, well, if I work with this person or I do this, this will happen. And what I've learned, at least from this one experience, is that if we listen to ourselves and we hear that little voice that might be very quiet saying, that's it, amazing things can happen, and we can be in a place that we never really imagined. And so some of the questions that I ask myself now, and I encourage you to ask, if you have that feeling, is what's the next best thing I can do to move my goal forward? Or what's the most brave action I can take to honor this feeling I feel? And if we are willing to take that step in the next direction, whatever that might be, you'll certainly end up in a place that could be more than you'd ever imagine. So I'm going to leave it there and open it up to more specific questions. I know there were some questions around specific things like work-life balance and pay, so I'm happy to answer those questions.
Leah, thank you so much. You're about the coolest person I have ever spoken to. This is just incredible. So I'm sure the students have a lot of questions to relay to the teachers, and then they'll get in the chat for us. But to start, I'm going to go back, and I've heard you speak before about the importance of mentors. And can you talk about, I guess, the importance of being brave or to reaching out to those people that inspire you? And then where you said the woman that you saw in the TED Talk didn't get back to you immediately, but then you ended up in this, relationship with them through the work that you did later. But can you talk a little bit about how you were brave enough to contact them in the first place and to set the students' expectations on how to do that? Absolutely.
Yeah, I early on decided that the answer to me was always why not? So why not reach out? Why not take courses at NASCAD and kind of, have sort of that aspirational way of thinking. And so anytime that I read something I really enjoyed, or I watched something that really spoke to me, I would find the contact of that individual and I would ask them specific questions. And I think I had some great success doing that. Founders of some really impressive companies I reached out to and said, how did you do this? So for another example, I think I mentioned in the mentorship call prior, I had met the founder of 37 Signals, which is a tech company that has done very well. And they implemented sabbaticals at their company. And I was like, gosh, that's so cool that you can do that in business. And I want to do that. And so sabbaticals, a month or a year you can take off to study something new. And because I had a very specific question and I was very curious about that topic, I had a really high response rate. So I think if there's something specific and you can really hone into what you're interested in learning from that individual and they have that experience, people really want to talk about it, and they have that expertise. So I think for reaching out to anyone, I would make sure that you're interested in the subject that they're speaking on. You can ask specific questions, and then just find their contact and try it out. I often use email to do so.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. I'm going to give it to Brett to manage the chat. Oh, you're on mute, Brett.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much for your talk, Leah. I actually do a lot of work with Ellen Farrell at the Entrepreneurship Center as well. I've competed in the venture capital investment competition with her, and I'm currently in her venture grade class as well.
Wow, amazing.
So I've actually heard your name and Squiggle Park be mentioned in my class. So that's pretty cool to finally put a face to the name. But there's two questions in the chat right now. The first one is there a busy season in the circus?
So that's a good question. There are busy seasons. Certainly, it's changed with the pandemic. So the busy season has just sort of like a wave has happened with everyone being able to be in person again. It wasn't something that was an easy profession to do during the pandemic. It very much halted. So now there's been sort of this resurgence of projects, and it's very, very busy right now. And then touring happens. So there's actually something called Cirque de Demain, which is like the Olympics of circus that takes place in France. And that's taking place in February. So all of the top graduates from the National Circus School and around the world will be there competing. So that's in February. And then the summertime is a very busy time for like what you'd see like Cirque du Soleil doing on like big top tours.
It's that's very, very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And the last question we have in the chat here is, do you get paid to professionally present your dance or circus art?
Yeah. So when I would define professional as someone who's paid to do their skill set. And so yes, and that's actually very challenging because I went from a very stable income to salary to being paid hourly as an artist. And it depends. In Montreal, as an aerialist, you're paid around $40 an hour. In Nova Scotia, we don't really have much of that, I guess, community here or at a professional level. So it would be more in line with dancers, and dancers are paid at about $32 an hour.
Great, and thank you for giving us kind of like a pay scale too. That probably helps with the students a bit. We have time for one more question. And what is the greatest challenge that you faced, or that you currently face, or you have faced in the past?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think for me, the greatest challenge and why I share this is for me, it's still wanting to know what's next, and feel like if I'm pursuing this, it's going to work out. And the truth is, you never really do. And so I'm still balancing my sort of tech world and art world, and just by nature of being in Nova Scotia, I think that's really important to have a bit more consistency in terms of income through work that I do in tech. But I'll just leave with one analogy. I listened to an interview with a filmmaker, M. Night Shyamalan, and he was talking about doing a puzzle with his daughter. And it was this 1,000-piece puzzle, and he had all of these pieces out on the table, and he thought, this is impossible. And then they started, finding the pieces, the flat ones, to make the border, and they found piece 1 and 2 and 3, and just every day they just found the next piece and they put it in, and eventually they saw the picture and it became very clear to them what puzzle they are making. And I love that as an analogy, is that the best thing you can do is just find that next piece, even if it feels overwhelming and you're not really sure where to go next.
That's a great analogy. Thank you, Leah. I want to squeeze in the last question because I think it's important. Brett, do you want to put in that last question for Leah?
Yes, of course. So this one is, what is Squiggle Park / Dreamscape?
Yeah. So Squiggle Park is an adaptive video game. So as kids play the game, it starts to adapt based on how they learn. And it's teaching reading skills. So it has sort of it built into the video game. And then on the back end, there's a bunch of content for educators or parents to see how they are progressing.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much for your time, Leah, and taking time out of your busy day. We really appreciate it, and it was really nice to meet you, and I'm sure the students feel the same way.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leah.